All right. Today we are in part 4 of the Enemies of the State of Marriage series we've been doing on the podcast. Babe, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about social media.
Yeah, this podcast might be 11 hours long because there's a lot that I have to say about this particular
I'm not sure
topic.
anybody wants to listen to us for 11 hours, though, Nathan.
No, they don't. And I know that I'm probably unpopular. This is a funny thing, babe, because as unpopular as your opinion on video games is for guys, my opinion on social media might be equally unpopular for women.
Fair enough. Let's get into that.
Before we get into today's episode, just wanted to remind you that in the description of the video below, we put links to all of our social media accounts.
You can always reach us with questions or comments about this episode at marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com.
And finally, if you want to support us financially, there is a link to be able to do so at the end of each of the descriptions of our videos. Now, let's get back to the show. Hi, everyone. I'm Nathan Warnock.
I'm Andrea Warnock.
And this is
Sweaty
NPR. You were not nearly slow or seductive enough to do the sweaty balls.
Hi.
I'm
I'm Andrea Warnock. Okay.
All right, what are we doing here, babe? What is this podcast?
Oh, that was really the beginning of our... Oh,
I'm not cutting that out.
this
That's gold.
is Marriage by Design, and you have thrown me completely off.
Sorry.
I thought we were going to cut that out, but that's pretty funny.
This is the Marriage by Design podcast. This is a show where we...
Talk about marriage.
Oh, my goodness. This is a show where we take a look at what the Bible says about God's design for marriage and talk about how we can practically live
What
that
the Bible
out
has
in
to
our
say about
own
that.
lives. So we have got to get this thing. We are off the rails. So here we are in the
turning the
middle.
ship around.
That's right. We're in the middle of a series where we're talking about enemies of the state of marriage, and we've talked about Hollywood. We talked about
Church.
the church and Christian organizations. We talked about reality TV, and now we're going to talk about social media,
Which is sort of news to me because I totally thought we were on a different one today when I was thinking. I mean, we've planned for both the last two episodes.
Shows. Yeah.
And so I was thinking of the episode 5, not episode 4 today, but that's okay.
That's good because, guys, do not miss next week's episode because we're going to reveal the biggest enemy of the state of marriage, and it is do not miss stuff. Because if you can get that right, the rest of these enemies are not going to be a temptation for you.
Yeah.
So make sure you don't miss that one next week. But this week, we are talking about, surprise, social media. And this is something that I'm super passionate about. And I know that it's not necessarily a popular opinion that I have with regards to social media. And that opinion really, when it boils down, is this. The entire world would be a better place if we all woke up tomorrow and all forms of social media were gone.
I believe that's true. Yeah.
And I'm not even arguing, like, I enjoy, we're doing this sort of natural comparison because as much as Andrea hates video games, that's how much I hate social media. And so, if that comparison comes up a couple times today during our episode, it's an apt comparison because it's well documented on this show.
I didn't know. I don't think I realized that you
hate
hate social media
video games.
that much.
Oh, I hate it. I absolutely hate, like, the actual meaning of the word hate is how I feel about social media. And here's the thing, like, so we're gonna I have 3 points that I'd love for us to talk about a bit. And again, I'm also going to be consistent because we've talked about video games and the reality of them, that video games are not sin. Social media is not sin in and of itself, but there's
so many ways in which it can be
of which social media is so negative that it's really hard to overlook those negatives to talk about the redeeming qualities. So I'm going to start with a couple of things. part of what makes social media so devastating is because of the three things I'm going to talk about here in a minute. Now, I'm telling you up front, as you listen to these, if your social media usage is while you're on the John going to the bathroom, I'm not really talking to you for the most part.
I don't know. Are you on the John going to the bathroom 4 hours a day? Then right. Nathan is talking to you.
Well, that's true. And one of these three, so 2 of my 3 points really don't apply if your social media is like, hey, when no one else is around, I'm doing shorts or doing reading posts or doing all the social media things. But first of all, that's a very rare person that's actually only using social media when there's no one else around. And so keep that in mind because I'm, like video games, social media can be a form of entertainment, and that certainly is cool if it's used in that way. But that aside, I believe social media, and these are my 3 points. So raise your hand if you recognize where I'm going with this. I believe that social media steals intimacy, kills time.
Oh, can we decide? Do we know what the other one starts with? Destroys.
Yes. And destroys expectations. So those are my 3 criticisms of social media, particularly as it applies to marriage. Steals time, kills intimacy, destroys expectations. So those are the 3 things that I want to talk about here a little bit. So let's just take them in order. So the first one, and this is the real low-hanging fruit, and this is a double win. Like if I were pastoring right now, I'd get double points because triple, because I have 3 points. They're clever because they go off of a Bible verse. And killing time is a literal thing that people say they're doing when they're on social media. I'm pastoring so hard right now. Like Stephen Furtick's probably calling me right now.
I assume you're going to talk about the Bible verse that this refers to.
Yes. So thank you for saying it, because I would have skipped right on by that. So those 3 things, steal, kill, and destroy, are the express things that Jesus identifies Satan's goals on earth. Satan came to steal, kill, and destroy. But I came to give life and give life abundantly.
Right. Where is that found? John.
Stop asking me questions like that. Okay. And I didn't even bring my phone in to be able to look it up real quick.
I'm going to have to go get it.
All right. So the first one I want to talk, so that's it. Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy. The first one that I want to talk about is the killing time, right? We talk about social media and we say, it's just something that I do to kill time. And certainly that's true, but wait, did you know it?
Yes. Okay. I was say it, and then I was like,
oh, you got to say it. Now nobody
John
believes
10:10.
you. John 10:10.
I don't care if anybody believes me.
Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy. So the first one with regards to killing time. Time is such a precious thing that we are given. How many times in the Bible are we instructed to be intentional with temporal things, right? Meaning like take every thought captive. Because our thoughts are about the things around us, right? About our circumstances, about our families, about our spouse. We're told by Paul to, when you think on these things, right?
Philippians.
Like it's intention. We need to be intentional with the things that we're doing with our time, including our thought life. And so much of social media is zombie time for most people. It's just hitting the little thing and watching someone else's lives, jokes, skits, stories of other people's lives flash in front of your face for huge amounts of time.
Well, that's actually the whole empty your mind is a real new agey type thing.
Right.
That people are really into. Let it all go. Empty your mind. But the Bible never tells us to do that. In fact, the Bible tells us that we should allow the Lord to renew our minds.
Great call. Yep.
Not empty our minds.
Right.
And so, that's antithetical to the Bible.
Right. Yeah. Romans 12, right, says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. In, was it Corinthians, when Paul says, do not get drunk with wine, but be continually filled with the Holy Spirit. Yep. Like, you're right. You're exactly right. This whole mindlessness is an Eastern religion philosophy that has crept into America, and it isn't God honoring. But the point is that social media is a conduit for that, where we're just forgetting about what's going on around us and just killing time. The problem is, particularly if you're a Christian and you're watching this, do you know what Satan wants you doing more than anything else? Killing time. Because you've been called into a relationship with Christ, and it's a relationship of power that is devastating for Satan if the Spirit lives it out through you. So there's nothing better you can be doing than killing time. Because you and I have a very limited amount of time here on this earth in the scope of things. And if we spend 10 minutes twice a day, 3 times a day, 5 times a day, 10 times a day, scrolling mindless stories and things on Facebook, we're not thinking on godly things. We're not spending time in prayer and the Word. We're not pursuing relationship with our kids. We're not doing potentially productive things we could be doing, that we're called to do in our lives, being good stewards of our house, being good stewards of our neighbors and all those kinds of things. And most to the point for this episode, we're not investing in our spouse. That's just time we're just killing. Look, I understand you can comment on all the things that people use to kill time, and I would say those things can be just as devastating. And to your point about things like video games, that's one of the biggest problems with video games. But I don't think it's hard statistically to say the scope of time being wasted on social media dwarfs the time spent wasted on video games by an exponential number.
Sure, that could be. Mm-hmm.
I think there's several hundred thousand or several 100 million Facebook profiles.
Mm-hmm.
And all video game consoles combined is 53 million. It's just and because it's so accessible, right? I mean, it's so easy to pull that thing out and just get lost in mindless stuff. And I think it's not God honoring. And so I want to just humbly submit to you, don't let Satan kill time. Now again, does that mean social media, Nathan and Andrea think social media is evil? No. Look, if you're standing in line at the grocery store, or you're, going to the bathroom, or you're, whatever thing you're doing where it's just you time, do what you want to do. Play video games, scroll on social media. Obviously, the things you're looking at on the internet, there's, issues of integrity there. But, these things are not bad things in and of themselves. The problem is, I can't tell you how many spouses we see when we're out and about that are scrolling that stuff. Your spouse is right there. You're obviously out together, and you're just killing that time that you could be using to build a relationship.
Flabbergasts me. There's been a couple times that Nathan and I have been out on a date to dinner or whatever, and a waiter or waitress has commented about, man, you guys actually talk to each other.
It's crazy.
Most of the people we see come in, have a little bit of conversation, but they're mostly on their phones. And we think that's crazy, but
Absolutely.
That's kind of gotten to be the norm.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it is crazy. And for us as Christians, man, don't let Satan kill your time, right? Don't let Satan kill the marriage you could have because you're spending time looking at somebody else's life. Get engaged in spending the time you have with the one God's given you to love and spend time with. So number one, it kills time. Number two, it steals intimacy. This is an extension of the killing time, although it's not exactly the same because I think there are some facets to this. Obviously, if you're not spending time with your spouse, intimacy works like this. It's like oh man, we need Jackson here because he'd know. Who's the guy that the Greek guy that got forced to push a rock up the hill forever?
Oh,
that
yeah.
guy. Where intimacy, you're never going to arrive, right? So you're never going to get to a place where you're like, we are 100% intimate. And the moment you go, I don't really feel like doing anything today to pursue my spouse in intimacy, the rock starts rolling down the hill. And distractions in our lives, and social media is a huge distraction in most people's lives. And I guess I should have said this earlier. When I'm talking about social media, I'm talking about any user posted stuff, right? Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, like all those, right? I'm not picking on any one, or this isn't a Facebook thing. This is just all that stuff where you're just mindlessly scrolling someone else's content that they've put up. So many people are allowing the rock of intimacy to roll down the mountain because, darn it, I really need to see this skit where someone sings the Frozen in slow motion, like sings the Let It Go in slow motion, right? I mean, these are the kinds of things that are on a lot of these social media. And even if it's like, hey, this day in history, great, there goes your intimacy into history. It's for me, what bothers me about it is we're not on guard when it comes to this particular thing. Like, if your wife's friends showed up at your door and were like, hey, we're going to take your wife away on a 2-month trip to the Caribbean, you'd be like, well, no, because then I'm going to miss out on relationship with her because she's going to be gone for 2 months. But nobody seems to notice when we give 1, 2, 3, 4 hours a day away of non-intentional time scrolling this day in history videos. And I think that's what bothers me so much about it, is it feels like the wolf that we've let into the hen house and no one's paying attention. Like, this is just an acceptable thing in society, fine, but particularly in the church and in Christian relationships. And I guess I just feel like we ought to be more turned on to this stuff than we are. Like, intimacy in marriage takes so much effort because we're always changing, right? We're always becoming someone else. We're always, our thoughts on things are changing. And this is really another area where social media steals intimacy because psychologically speaking, it used to be that people, when they were in their 15 to 20 year old years, would form these core beliefs. Right, whatever those core beliefs are about the things they believe about life and their future and all those things. And really, those things never changed. So when you would find a spouse, there were certain core things where you're like, well, this is who I'm married to. And then, of course, things would change circumstantially, but generally those core beliefs wouldn't change a ton. Now, with all of these different persuasive things inundating us all the time, there's way more of what I've called like persuasion fatigue, where it's not that people's opinions are always changing, it's that they reach this place where they go, I just don't care. Like, there's so much out there, I can't figure it all out, I just don't care. That is not God honoring.
Yeah.
Like, we are called to be thinking individuals. And this inundation with all of these different strongly worded beliefs that we catch on all these social medias, it's understandable why people are like, I'm just not even gonna think about it. Like politics, I just don't even want to. Like, I'm not gonna vote, or like it just doesn't. I can't figure it out, so it doesn't matter. And the problem is that destroys intimacy, because then how many conversations are now, hey babe, what do you think about this election? I just don't want to. I don't want to think about it. That kills intimacy, because it starts putting fences around what we can and cannot talk about within our marriage. The other way that it destroys intimacy is social media makes every little disagreement seem like it's the hill everyone needs to die on. Like, there's so much stuff out there about like, it's no longer people just saying like, hey, this is my opinion. Here's why I believe this. Have a nice day. Right. It's like, it's worded with, oftentimes, a lot of emotion and a lot of inflammatory stuff, so that what you because it's got to grab your attention, right? This is the same reason why forever the evening news has been, if it bleeds, it leads.
Right.
Because they got to grab your attention. Well, of course this would go over to social media. So now if it's just a nice person, and I realize the irony of me saying this in a podcast that's going to be posted on social media, but I would say this even applies to us. Like, you and I generally are pretty even keeled. And, I could probably get a lot more likes if I just got on here and just absolutely, trashed the LGBT community or some church that's doing something it shouldn't be doing with regards to marriage. But we don't do that because I don't think that's civil. But my point is, all of this uncivility on social media, it characterizes the way you think about disagreements you have with your spouse. I don't know how it could not. Because every little thing is a massive thing. And it's almost like we start buying into this, like, well, man, if I don't really overstate this point to my spouse, they're not going to get it. Because, if it bleeds, it leads. And I think that can really be devastating on intimacy within our marriage. You look like you have thoughts on that. Do you think I'm being like overstating that a little bit?
I don't know that I would agree with that, but that's just in my own life.
You mean you yourself don't see that as a thing?
Right.
Okay, could be. Okay, so kills time, steals intimacy, and destroys expectations. So this is old school social media conversation, right? I mean, for the church, I think, has been on social media for a long time with regards to how when you start allowing someone else's life all the time into your mind, it changes the way you think about your own life. And the reality of the matter is, everybody's way funnier on social media than they are in real life. Everybody's got a way better life on social media than they actually have in real life. Everyone's more attractive on social media than they are in real life. Everyone has less problems on social media than they have in real life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because very rarely do people do non-complaining real posts. Right? Like, lots of people do. You're never going to imagine what this guy did to me at Starbucks the other day or whatever.
Sure.
But I'm talking about like people that are just like, hey world, my life's pretty rough right now. Here's what's going on. Right? Most people, there are some, but most people aren't doing that. And so when we consume things on social media, it sets our expectations about. The temptation is for it to set our expectations about what's up with our life. Like, how come me and my spouse aren't really funny? Like this couple that always posts these videos up where they're doing funny stuff as a couple. Like, why don't we ever do funny stuff like that as a couple?
It seems like everyone our age on social media has better finances than we do. Right. What's wrong with us? What are we doing wrong? How do we get ahead?
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is really a primary problem with social media is that, like, the comparison game. We as Christians are specifically called not to compare ourselves to each other, but rather to recognize our acceptance by Christ and our responsibility to him in submission. And that's a two-way street, right? It's not also over here and all that kind of stuff. In fact, that's what Satan uses to get us distracted from our walk with the Lord. And that really, at the end of the day, is, I believe, Satan's victory in social media. Is, at the end of the day, it is a distraction.
Right.
And
yeah, we were just talking about if Satan can't make you sin, he'll just distract you,
right,
because
makes you
then
ineffective.
you're ineffective.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. And maybe it's the ease of access to social media that really has perpetuated this, but we see it a lot, and it's really hard to call out because it's kind of like the modern day drinking, right? Like, we don't really, some do, but we don't really talk a lot in the modern age about drinking like they did back in like the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Now it's just sort of accepted. But social media is kind of that thing where it's like it needs to come up in a lot of conversations with couples, but it's a hard thing to bring up because people get prickly as soon as you bring it up about, that's not a sin. Well, right. All things are lawful,
but not all things are beneficial.
Right. Is anyone asking, is this social media thing really benefiting anyone? I get some laughs.
some
Or,
benefits.
I learned some interesting things. But is it really beneficial to my marriage and my
Yeah, I think that's
family?
the thing to think about is, all this time that you may be spending on social media, whatever that social media is, what would I be doing if I weren't doing this? And is that a better use of my time? Maybe
Right.
is the alternative maybe a more God honoring use of my time? Are the thoughts that I would be having better thoughts if I weren't on social media? As much as I am, and are the, I think intentionality is important, of course. And so thinking about, am I actually being intentional with what I'm doing here, or am I just allowing my mind to be taken
Right.
up? Yeah.
Yeah, and talk about it with your spouse, right? I mean, maybe this is something you both struggle with. Maybe this is something that just one or the other of you struggle with, right? Maybe you just need to commit to a time where you're like, hey, for a month, let's just not do it at all and see if it has an impact on our relationship. So I'd encourage you, have the conversation and, like Andrea suggested, think about, what is this stealing from me? Like, what would I be doing alternatively if I wasn't spending time on here? And, it's easy to go, I don't spend that much time on it. But every study pretty much ever done about videos on social media, particularly shorts, is that they're specifically designed to make you feel like you haven't been doing it very long when you have. And so, there are programs out there that can give you feedback on how much time you're spending on social media. So I'd recommend that if you're like, man, how much time do I spend on this? That would be beneficial. So, but enemy of the state of marriage, social media. Don't let social media kill your time, steal your intimacy, or destroy your expectations for your marriage. All right, guys. Next week, last one. Love to have you join us. Check it out. Love to have you let me know what you think. Am I crazy?
Not last
Right?
one episode ever, just the
No,
last
last one in the enemy of the
in
state
the
of
enemy
marriage.
of the state of marriage.
Thank you, babe. Thank you. So let me know. Am I crazy? Am I just being old man Nathan here? Are there redeeming benefits to social media? Feel free to put those in the comments below and let me know what you think. Till next time, I'm Nathan.
I'm Andrea.
And remember, God is for your marriage.